And it is a great joy to say that Kate Winslet joins me now. How are you?
Oh, very well. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a joy to have
Thank
you.
you. I don't think I've ever been on your show, so this is an exciting moment.
I'm glad it's not a sign of things going downhill. I'm glad it's like, well, I was winning an Oscar and now I'm on Q on CBC.
Well, I'm a huge fan of all things Canadian, so thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Were you into rocks and fossils now before you made this film?
Um, no, not really. I mean, fascinated, yes, but I knew really very little about Mary Anning, and I found myself feeling kind of quite ashamed at how little I knew about her. But I had an amazing experience getting ready to play the part because I worked one-on-one with a paleontologist down in Lyme Regis, and I actually got to comb all of the beaches that Mary would have worked on, quite specifically two beaches with a wonderful man who truly taught me how to fossil hunt and to crack open rock nodules in search of ammonites, and I really can do it, and that was something that I learned on the film. So it was a great and very very unexpected experience in that regard, and working with the wonderful people down there.
Are you still doing it? Are you still walking around the beaches going, "That's one right there"?
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a global pandemic going on,
Hold
and so
on,
there's
what?
not been
Wait,
a huge
hold
amount
on,
of
what?
going out.
Hold on, what? I maybe over there hasn't made it here yet.
But I am in touch with the man who taught me, actually. We've remained really good friends. And in fact, there was a lovely woman named Lizzie Wiscon who works at the Lyme Regis Museum, and she's partially sighted and was just so kind. And I spent the day with her and her guide dog and just listened to her speaking, because the Dorset accent that I had to do for Mary is not something that came very easily to me. And she specifically helped me, and she talked about it on local Dorset radio. And I called the gentleman who helped me to fossil and just said, "Oh, will you say hi to Lizzie and tell her I said thanks." And so it's really nice. I've kept in touch with those people, and I feel very fortunate to have met them all.
What was it about Mary Anning that made you want to tell her story?
Well, we live in a time, I think, where we just need more strong female stories, particularly truthful ones like this, which tells the story of a woman who was marginalized by, a patriarchal society. She lived in a time of systemic oppression, and she achieved extraordinary things in the world of science, but her findings were taken from her, robbed from her, really, by rich, wealthy, greedy men who, frankly, weren't as clever as she was. I mean, if it weren't for Mary Anning, she discovered dinosaur poo. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't know what dinosaurs ate. She discovered the coprolite, which is the name for fossilized feces, dinosaur feces. And I've polished poo, by the way. That was one of my things I had to learn. I had to learn how to polish a coprolite and turn it into a nice, shiny, round stone. I got quite good at that, actually.
Well, that's a skill you can take with you for the rest of your life, Kate.
Well, there you go. But she was an extraordinary woman. She lived a life of poverty. She was completely uneducated. She was totally self-taught. She learned everything about paleontology from her father, whom she had a really close relationship with, who sadly died when she was quite young. And she was a remarkable woman who deserves a place in the history books, and sadly doesn't really have one. And she was very uncomplaining. She was extremely compassionate. She was very well loved by her community. And it was an honor to play someone as historically significant as her.
I remember when the film was first announced, there was a bit of controversy around it being a romance. Critics, including descendants of Mary Anning herself, argued that no one really knew if she was gay or straight. There's not enough evidence. But why was it important for you to help put this interpretation of Mary's story into the world?
Well, that's true. I mean, there isn't actually there isn't any historical evidence to support whether she had relationships with men or with women, and this was very much Frances Lee's interpretation. I think the thing that felt wonderful for us was that Frances creates a story about two people who fall in love, and that they are of the same sex is never addressed or explained in any way. It just is. So it appears to me that I feel like this kind of storytelling is so important in terms of the evolution of the way audiences and the world view LGBTQ people and their relationships. And so by telling these kinds of stories, we're normalizing same-sex love without fear, without hesitation. And it was such a privilege, honestly, to be part of that conversation, contributing in some small way to that important ongoing conversation.
And so, I mean, so looked forward to by members of the queer community when this film was announced. I mean, I can imagine that might add a little bit of pressure to it. It might add a little bit of pressure to being in the film or putting the film out, knowing the anticipation of it.
Well, I just think we need more of these films so that they just become part of the mainstream. It's so often that films where there is a same-sex couple at the core of the story or as a part of the narrative, so often we end up comparing those films immediately to other films of that nature. But actually, if there were just more films where same-sex relationships were part of the narrative, then perhaps we wouldn't be drawing comparisons so immediately. We would just be enjoying learning about those people and watching those stories evolve.
It's funny to talk to you there at your house during this COVID thing. All I can think is how your life is different from when you were growing up. You grew up in a family full of actors. I can't imagine what it's like to grow up in a house where just about everybody is an actor.
Well, there's lots of competing for sort of airtime in terms of who can speak the loudest and shout the loudest.
Is that so?
So, and actually at the moment, history is slightly repeating itself. My daughter Mia is actually now an actress. And funnily enough, she did a small independent film in Ireland at the end of last year, which is going to the Rome Film Festival. And so is Ammonite. So it's quite funny. We're like having these quite fun conversations about like, oh, how fun, Mum. We've both got a film in a festival together. And it's a really wonderful experience. But no, I'm very, very lucky to have grown up with a bunch of rowdy actors around me, because it's always kept me so grounded. And it's just a job, and I love it, and we all love it, and I think I love it all the more as time goes by. I just really, really feel grateful for it.
It is just a job, and I can tell your love for it. I can't help but think, though, I was thinking about this the other day, when you were in Titanic, that level of fame in terms of being an actor doesn't happen very often, and I can't imagine what it was like. How much did everything change for you at such a young age when you get Titanic?
Well, it changed, a lot. And actually, when we were making the film, I remember the makeup artist, I think it was, said to me, "Oh gosh, how are you going to cope? Your life's going to change so significantly." And I would say, no, it's not. My life isn't going to change. What are you talking about? I'm still going to be me. I felt sort of quite defiant. And of course I am still me, but my life did change, most definitely. And nothing can really prepare you for that. Obviously, I'm incredibly grateful for the great platform that it provided me for my career, but my life in terms of personal privacy changed quite significantly. But you live and learn. And I just feel very grateful, I think, now that all of those things happened to me 20 plus years ago. I think I'd find it really hard being suddenly famous in this particular climate, the world we live in now, because I think with social media, there's a huge amount more pressure, I think, on new talented individuals to keep getting those likes and really keep, I think, striving for, screen time, and I think there's pressure, more pressure on young people these days than there was when Leo and I were experiencing the sort of Titanic fame. But I'm an old lady now.
Oh, go away,
Tom.
Go away.
I'm nearly 45 years
old.
Go
away.
Can you believe I had my 21st birthday on Titanic?
Oh, geez.
I turned 21, and Leo turned 22, and we've been wishing each other a happy birthday every year ever since.
We talked a little bit about Titanic. We talked a little bit about you winning an Oscar, and you were receiving the TIFF Tribute Award for outstanding contributions to the film industry. But, I also think about Mary Anning. She was a scientist who wasn't celebrated in her time. She didn't get the praise male paleontologists got. And it makes me think about validation. On that theme, I'd love to know, it can't be awards. What is it that gives you validation as an actor? What is it that gives you that feeling of success?
Honey, you're only as good as your last gig. And if they invite you back and they want you for more, then that's validation. Just keep the foot in the door, stay in the game, head down, work hard, get on with it. And I just feel very lucky that I'm continuing to be able to get those gigs. I love my job. And I think, we live in a time where to have job security is something that so few people have. And I've never been more grateful.
Well, it's been a joy to talk to you, Kate. And sorry for the mix-up, and thanks so much for your time.
No problem, Tom. Thank you.
Come back now soon. We'll talk to you later on. Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.